Signs of the Southland, Sunday, January 23rd, 2022. Mr. Grant, we took a week off because we recorded like 4 hours of audio 2 weeks ago. I think it did go pretty well. What did you think of our 100th episode special?
I gotta say, as somebody who is a big fan of the Basketball Conference podcast, starring one Mr. Joey Weaver and Mike McDaniel, and as the guy among the two of us who does re-listen to this here fine podcast to make sure that
he grinds the tape.
Yeah, I grind the tape. Very weird merging of worlds to hear our voices intermingled with the legendary Joey Weaver, but no, everything else I thought was delightful. It was great having him on. It was great having everyone else on, and it was a nice distraction from the truly awful pain that is Georgia Tech football. Because let's be real, the highlight moments that everyone, I think except me, on brand, brought up were all football. But it was good to go down memory lane, especially learning a thing or two. FSU 2009. I did not know a single thing about other than it rained, because they mentioned that last year, or I guess now 2020
2 years ago,
during that FSU rainy game. But now I'm rambling, but I thought it was nice. If anybody has any comments on future segments they'd like to see, any maybe getting the roving Carolina correspondent in the door a little more often or something like that, but based on last week's basketball results, I think it's for the best that we didn't have him on 2 weeks in a row. So thank you for
I would have him on right now. We'll get there. We'll get there. I have some we could strike while the iron is hot there, personally. It was a good episode. I think it was really fun to, like you said, it was really fun to listen to all the stories. And the one thing that stuck out to me, this is not related to the actual stories, but like Joey's audio recording setup was very professional. And I'm very excited to potentially put something like that together. If work ever sends me the microphone that they told me they'd send me, but we'll find out whenever that comes in.
Hey, fair enough. And readers, listeners,
viewers, because podcasting is a visual medium.
If you guys have any stories or comments on stories you guys would like to share with us, as always, from the rumbleseat@gmail.com, add us on Twitter, comment. I think my DMs are open, but I don't know about that. But yeah,
I didn't think you were going to do the plug this early. I knew this episode was going to be short. I didn't think it was going to be that short.
We got to get them while we can. But some exciting stuff coming up, written and on the podcast through, kind of this mediumly quiet. I guess it's not that quiet. We are about to talk about 5 different sports, but relatively quiet January before, baseball and softball get back up. We've had, I guess, only half of the tennis that we expected. It's still relatively quiet, I'd say.
We have like 2 quiet weeks. We have 2 quiet-ish weeks until then. You have all of the spring sports in play. But let's start with a holdover from the fall. The swim team, was supposed to be in action this past couple of weeks, but inclement weather in Atlanta seemed to and Charlotte. Snow affects us all. Winter weather, tropical storm. What was it? No, it was winter storm Izzy after the Atlanta Olympics mascot affects us all, apparently.
They name winter storms. Am I clueless on that? Is that like a thing?
It's not so it's not NOAA. Like, it's not an official name. Like, hurricanes get official legal names, but the Weather Channel just gives storms marketing names, basically.
I'm sure that is just super normal and for not weird reasons.
Do you want to tell us where swim is going next week?
Swim is going to 750 First Drive Northwest because they're going to be at home. But they'll be facing Tulane and Arkansas at home on Friday evening, afternoon, late afternoon, whatever you want to call it. And then they will be hosting Gardner Webb. I believe that's for Senior Day on Saturday because it is their last dual meet, home or away, of the year. So Gardner Webb will be at home, and then we'll have the Yellow Jacket invite, which typically has not been very well patronized. So go figure on that. And then we'll see them in action again really they're at home the rest of the way because you got Yellow Jacket invite in February, then you got ACCs, which Tech is hosting, and then you have NCAAs, which Tech is also hosting. So
this is just an incredible schedule. Like I'm scrolling through it right now, and they do not leave. The only away meet on this part of the schedule, actually, I think in literally all of their schedule, other than I guess they spent a weekend for a cup of coffee in North Carolina, but the rest of the schedule is just all.
Well, see, that's the crazy thing. Last year we were talking about their schedule and the ridiculous nonsense that was this coaching staff having to spend 5 straight weekends in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Now they spend like 10 straight weekends in Atlanta.
Hey, you know what? If that's what keeps the cost down and keeps the doors open, travel budget really low this year, bringing in money, hosting this meet this year. Those are good things. But what's I going to say? Shoot. No, I am a little disappointed not to see us match up against Queens. I thought it was really weird when I found out they were on the schedule because I'm not much of a D2 swim guy. Was never really on my radar as much as D1 or D3 when I was, looking at schools or just, being a fan of the sport. But Queens is pretty good. So a little disappointed not to see them. They did get sleeted, freezing rain, did.
I mean, yeah, they were probably going to bust the 3 hours down to Atlanta, I assume.
Yeah, I'd rather them, stay warm and safe than, do a swim meet. As much as I love the sport, but so yeah.
85 was a whole mess from what I understand. So, but better safe than sorry on that one.
We got D1 competition coming up this weekend. Arkansas, Tulane, Gardner Webb. So should be something, a tune-up. We haven't seen a real meet in feels like months, but
Yeah, because they got Auburn was canceled because of COVID protocols. There was an inter squad this past Friday, apparently.
Yeah, it was like Queens isn't showing up, but we are still here to do this meet, so let's do the meet kind of thing.
Yeah, interesting. And then obviously Tulane and Arkansas for the women, and then Gardner Webb for the men and women next week. So good stuff. Let's keep on trucking to another short update on the track and field team. They were at the Carolina Challenge in the past couple of weeks. What do you got for me there?
Yeah, not a ton. There are a couple of first place finishers. I'm going to get the names right, so let me go look. That would be Taylor Grimes in the long jump. They actually had 3 in the top 5 in that event, as well as Ethan Kernow winning the men's 5,000 meter. Sorry, not the 500 meter. A couple other podium finishes. It's fine. I think the big takeaway here is they spent a lot of time in South Carolina. So hopefully, they enjoy that because they're going back to Clemson, even though they were just there 2 weeks ago, this coming week for the Bob Pollock invite. And yeah, the other thing I got is they're 5 weeks out, as Coach Drosky noted, from ACC indoors. So, kind of getting into the stretch run of indoor season. And that's the interesting thing about track is it just does kind of bifurcate the spring. So indoor will be over before I guess we even really know it,
Yeah, they're like you said, they're just 5 weeks from being done. This is just always a very short, condensed, nice and tight, like 10-week season. It's very odd.
Yep. But yeah, that's all I have on track. Not a ton there. Nothing. Not that nothing jumped out, but nothing crazy in terms of headlines or things like that.
Let's go to something with a couple more headlines. Women's tennis, who's currently ranked 12th in the ITA rankings. We missed a couple of things in the last weeks as tennis started back up. We had a couple of meets or a couple of matches canceled, but they did face South Carolina. And then unfortunately their Georgia Southern match was canceled because of COVID protocols at Southern. Talk to me a little bit about the South Carolina matchup.
Yeah, so they were in Carolina in Columbia for I think it was 2 days, but they've matched up with Carolina quite a few times over the past few seasons. Tech has generally come out of those on top. I think it's fair to say, even though we did have like a bottom of the top 25 year in there when we were kind of matching up really similarly to Carolina. They do tend to get great teams into Columbia for their various fights and things like that. Tech basically played for the most part against South Carolina and Auburn. They went 1-for-3 against both of the two of those schools in doubles. Again, with not playing a full match against Auburn, a little bit different, but Tech did fare better against the Gamecocks in singles. On the second day of the weekend, they were able to play Wake Forest, who has a tremendous doubles pairing, number 2 in the country, and they did, net that upset, if you will let me use that pun. Carol Lee, and Kate Sharabura, big upset for them. So that's great to see. Hopefully Tech's doubles is trending up because, always nice to notch that first point in a match, and then only having to go 3 for 6 on singles rather than 4 for 2 is a pretty notable difference. Tech did go 5 for 8 in singles on the second day as well, with no Georgia Southern. That's really the only Tech women's tennis news we got, and we'll kind of pivot towards what's coming next. I think a little bit later, or do you want to do that right now?
No, we'll cobble them together because I think we have a couple of discussion points there as well. Let's talk about the men real quick. They are receiving votes in the ITA rankings. So receiving votes, they're rankings, not really polls. So it's weird to.
They're outside of the top 25, but it's not like they're publishing everybody in that rank. You know what I mean?
They're on the bubble.
Yeah.
They're on the top 25 bubble. They hosted the MLK Invitational in Atlanta, day 1 versus Columbia University. That was a 4-3 win from what I can tell from the stat sheet. Illinois was on day 2. That was also a 4-3 win. Day 3 had a little bit of a weird setup. There were 2 singles matches and 2 doubles matches. So not really a dual match sort of setup. Martin defeated his Columbia opponent in straight sets. Chopra defeated his Columbia opponent in straight sets. Both of them, weirdly enough, 6-2, 6-1, and then the reverse, 6-1, 6-2. And then Martin and Dong took out their UNC opponent, 6-3 in a doubles pairing. And then Chopra and Shelcher took out their Columbia opponent by a score of 6-3 in that doubles pairing. The one thing that I saw from reading through the stats, reading through the recaps here, was that I don't think you could correct me if I'm wrong, and you probably will, but I don't think we've seen a Chopra Shelcher pairing, really. I think it's usually been Chopra Dong. Martin also usually is not paired with Dong. So a little bit of rotation early in the season, which I find really curious.
You're very correct on the Martin Dong, but Chopra Shelcher is a little more common. Again, we could pull numbers on that, but you're kind of putting me on the spot there. But it's definitely something.
Yeah, we don't need to get it exactly right in the ballpark
before. But in terms of teams that we see, we've seen Columbia and Illinois at this event basically as long as I've been covering this team. The weirder part is in the past it has been another out of conference team, the team from Athens usually, if you catch my drift. And that Monday feature MLK Day usually being Tech versus Athens. So a little bit different not seeing them in that spot. But a little bit of lineup rotation, seeing Martin play, not with McDaniel is pretty unusual. So interesting to see that there. And then, just in terms of the competition, Chopra, amazing weekend for him. I believe he went 3-0 in singles and in doubles. So, could not do much better than what he got asked for there. And like we noted, a couple of those 2-set wins as well. So pretty good to see. Georgia Tech did also play State and the Citadel this weekend. State, I always feel a little bit bad saying this, but this is kind of like their Super Bowl. They do want to come into Tech and win. They bring the fire every year. That was always one that it was kind of like you show up for the meet and you're like, oh gosh, like I can feel the vibes. That one's always loud.
Like
Yep.
in the arena, for a couple of times that we were able to go while we were students, that one was a rowdy one.
Yep.
Especially with the parents from they're nearby. Most of the recruits are nearby. It gets really loud. This one was kind of routine, I think, despite
Oh,
what the final score says.
absolutely. That's exactly the takeaway I would have had there too. Georgia State is better than you think. They're number 63 in the ITA draft standings. We'll get
Oh,
into
we'll get
that.
there.
We'll
We'll get
unbox
there.
that in just a sec. That's kind of what we were alluding to at the end of the women's tennis thing, because the ITA kickoff weekend's always a weird little thing. But yeah, Tech did win 4-3 against Georgia State. They were up 4-0, and 3 points came back the other way due to a retirement, a two very close set. I believe it was 6-4 and 7-5 or 7-6. Loss by a freshman, Angel Guerrero. And then we also had a tiebreak go against Tech. It was 1-1, and with the match already decided 4-0, it was kind of like house money, I guess. The retirement's not as big of a deal. The tiebreak, you're not going to play a full set, etc. So yeah, a 4-3, much more, I would say, dominant win than you'd think, looking at it. And plus, you didn't have McDaniel in the singles lineup either, so that definitely would have pushed everyone down another peg.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the Citadel game, which was sort of similar. But when I was reading through the box score for this one, there was no third doubles game or match or whatever they're called, and no 6 singles match. So weirdly enough, both of those points got awarded to the Citadel on the stat sheet, and I think on the final score. But everything else was pretty routine in terms of just in the same way, pretty much.
Yeah. I will say that on the live stats, because they haven't posted a review yet of the match. On the live stats, the Jackets took the first doubles 6-1. Andres Martin and Keshav Chopra, again, some squad rotation, just absolutely smashing the Citadel boys. Shendog and Angel Guerrero played on court 2. They did lose there. And then on court 3, it was Citadel player and player. So blank and blank won by forfeit, and the score was listed as 98-0. So granted that with the obvious caveat that we weren't there and the results, like the recap, hasn't been posted yet. Don't really know if that was a retirement or just Tech saying, we don't have the players, somebody's sick, somebody's injured. I wouldn't read too more into it than that. If it was health and safety protocols, they probably would have just health and safetied it, probably something along that line. But in terms of the actual singles, Andres Martin 6-2, 6-0 on court 1, Keshav Chopra in 2 sets, Shendong 6-2, 6-2, Shelcher 6-4, 6-0, and Angel Guerrero, freshman, on court 5, 6-0, 6-0 with a 98.
6-0, 6-0 is nasty. That, there's no getting around. That's a paddling right there.
I'm not gonna disparage Angel Guerrero too much, but a 6-0, 6-0 by the still adapting to the NCAA game freshman, the team's deep. The team's a little deeper this year. They deserve that 29 ranking, and I think based on how they played against Columbia and Illinois, who were both receiving votes level teams, I think that stock should go up. I'm not saying book your tickets to Seattle or Madison. I forget which men and women are hosting the ITA Nationals, but I think they'll at least make it a contest up in Charlottesville this weekend.
So let's talk about the ITA kickoff weekend that's coming up for both the men's and the women's teams. We alluded to it a little bit earlier. The women are actually up first. They are playing this weekend. They're hosting their own regional. They are the 10th national seed. They'll host Michigan, Ole Miss, and Old Dominion. I think the pairing is Michigan, Ole Miss, and then Tech, Old Dominion for the actual matches. And then on the men's side, they are on the 29th and 30th. They will be up in Charlottesville later this week. I think that's this week. Next weekend. Number 7 UVA is the host, and then 34 Tech, Middle Tennessee State, and Ball State. I don't have the exact pairings for that one in front of me, but I think the thing that we really wanted to talk about, at least at leg, was the draft setup for this. You mentioned that they do this every year, and it just hurts my brain to think about how this works and why someone would do it in this fashion.
Yeah, I don't know why they do this, and I know it's been a thing for a while because we've definitely talked about this with the From the Rumble Seat chat. Former host Ethan Kreger also was definite alluded to that this being the case in the past on the show. But basically, what happens is the host of nationals gets an automatic bid to, they're one of the top 16 teams, and then 15 other sites are chosen. So this year, number 66 was Washington and number 64 Wisconsin are hosting. Probably all going to be top 20-ish at the very least teams coming into their buildings. And after that, after those top 15 teams are selected as hosts, so for the women's particular case, that's Texas, North Carolina, Pepperdine, the school in Athens, UCLA, NC State, Florida State, Duke, Virginia, Georgia Tech, UCF, Ohio State, Cal, Berkeley, Baylor, and A&M are the 15 hosts. And there are slates after that of I think it's 10 more teams each. So we had 16 through 26, but not number 25 for whatever reason lined up in kind of like a slate in the first hour or 45 minutes, where Michigan's the first up. They're number 16. They get to pick where they're headed. And in this case, they picked to be the number 2 seed at Georgia Tech. So number 10, Georgia Tech, and number 16, Michigan, with the winner in the bracket then going on to play so number 7, whoever comes out of the Florida State regional with Florida, FIU, and Illinois. And basically it just proceeds down the list where if you look at the 17 and 18 seeds, LSU and Tennessee, back to back, they picked to be the 2nd and 3rd seeds at Ohio State. So the 12, 17, and 18 ranked teams in the country are all in the Ohio State region. Again, the winner of that region would come out to play the winner of the UCLA region once they're in Madison. So very interesting proposition here. Kind of unlike anything we see in college sports anywhere else, I would say.
It's bizarre, legitimately bizarre, where you have to bid on where you want to. It's so weird. Well, it's like the reverse of that one-time MLB proposal for the wild card games. I think this was during the 2020 season, right before when they were renegotiating how they were going to do the postseason, where there was a situation where MLB was like, oh, we'll just let the higher seeds pick who they want to play out of whoever wins the divisional games, which is just so bizarre.
Yep.
Anyway, so those are the matchups.
I was going to say, I got one more thing here.
Go for it.
If you look at every other regional, the highest overall ranked region is Tech. It is Tech at 10, Michigan at 16, Ole Miss at 28, and Old Dominion at 30. Because in that second slate of the next 10 teams, you had USC picked to be the 3 seed at Baylor, then Old Miss picked to be the 3 seed at Tech, Vanderbilt picked to be the 2 seed at Cal, and then right after them, Old Dominion was like, nope, we want the 4th seed in Atlanta. So go figure.
It's just so bizarre. So bizarre. Just to round out the scheduled talk, men's tennis also has 2 more dates coming up. One versus Auburn. They'll host that on February 4th. And then February 6th at South Carolina. Those are the ones I saw. I didn't have the ones coming up for women's tennis in front of me.
Yep. I also got one more note. I think it's kind of a allusion to the power of the ACC this year in women's tennis that Louisville and Syracuse, Louisville, who was your number 60th team in the country, the 46th pick in the draft, and Syracuse, the number 28 pick in the draft, / the number 44 team in the country, or the seed or whatever ITA is determining there. They both passed. ACC is looking to be strong. If you're taking extra losses, you don't want to be doing that there. So, coming out of this weekend with a few quality wins is great. And getting hopefully to nationals, then being the goal to get some opportunities against big time players coming up in the next couple weeks too.
Yep. Speaking of teams that have had opportunities versus big time players, let's talk about Tech women's basketball. They have played like 5 games in 2.5 weeks, 5 or 6 games in 2.5 weeks. There have been too many games that I've counted recently. So they played Pitt, FSU, Miami, Syracuse, and UNC. UNC was today. I've got a little bit on that, but tell me about the Pitt and FSU games, sir.
Yeah. So those were both very interesting in kind of wildly different ways, I think is a fair way to put it. Pitt, Georgia Tech jumped out to a big lead. I think this has been a theme we've seen really in every contest. Wins and losses. It's true to today's game as North Carolina versus North Carolina, as it was against FSU, as it was against Syracuse, as it was against Pitt. It was a theme. Georgia Tech out of the gate started strong, both effective on defense and great on offense. Pitt is not too bueno. They and Syracuse are both, towards the bottom. They're the second division.
Languishing at the bottom of the conference, one might say.
Pitt was also playing without their best player due to a coaching decision. Go figure there. I don't have any insight there. I don't really know if I ever will, and that's okay. Georgia Tech stayed in command through the first half, and then in the second, particularly the fourth, really the fourth, Pitt scored 20-something points in the fourth quarter while Tech was held to single digits. Granted, you can afford to do that when you're up by almost 30, but the fact that the game ended, I believe, 62-53, so that 9-10 point margin is not great and kind of emblematic, right? We saw Tech lose a lead late against Miami, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit too. We saw Tech lose a 5-point lead with 90 seconds to play against Louisville. You want to be winning those competitions, particularly against a good team like Louisville and a scrappy team like Miami. And granted, we did already talk about Louisville, so I'm not going to sit too much on that. But Tech jumped ahead to a lead against FSU and kind of saw the same thing happen, except to the point where they were digging themselves out of a late hole, and that one could have gone the other way as well.
Mm-hmm. Miami, like you mentioned, that one was sort of I would say was kind of the reverse of the FSU game. Sort of Miami did to Tech what Tech did to FSU, right? Because it took 6 or 8 straight points at the end of the frame for Tech to beat FSU. I have boat race on here for some reason. That's not what happened. But Miami sort of did the opposite. Like you said, it was a very close game because Tech had taken its foot off the gas, and Miami just slipped past and took advantage.
Yeah, they were playing the exact kind of basketball they wanted to play. Tech has had a turnover issue this year. I don't think that's really a thing you can have much of a doubt. And again, Syracuse, Georgia Tech shot almost 50%. They led wire to wire. Loda Mailatinen scored a basket on a free throw before the game even started. They led quite literally all 40 minutes of that game, but turned the ball over 26 times.
They almost doubled up Cuse on turnovers and still won by a comfortable lead.
Comfortable, never in doubt lead nonetheless. Which again, and I kind of go read Yellow Jacket Roundup, you'll see this, but I allude to this. Georgia Tech has these fundamental flaws that kind of show up every once in a while, and certain teams can take advantage of it better than others. Miami has always played a bruising defense that, with Tech not having a lot of ball handler type point guard players, with no Kiara Fletcher kind of leading the way there, they've struggled with ball security, right? And Miami was able to force those turnovers. And granted, so was Syracuse. The difference with Syracuse is Georgia Tech was very efficient in every other aspect of the game, right? They were shooting free throws well, that the threes weren't hurting them. They were shooting 50% from the floor. They were rebounding well.
Also, Syracuse is down 13 scholarship players because of transfers after an offseason scandal. So,
yeah,
a couple other factors.
Gina Stratmana, who I can't imagine where the team would be without that, considering the depth that we've had otherwise. So, it's the flip side of that same coin. And Georgia Tech, yes, they turned the ball over a lot against Syracuse, but it felt like every shot they were taking was finding its way into the net. And you can have games where, a la Auburn, those shots aren't falling, or games like Purdue where you shoot a lot of threes and they're not falling and you're not great at the free throw line. Tech has these recurring things that we've seen, but quite frankly, they are talented enough and good enough at enough aspects of the game that, like today, went on a 10+ minute field goal drought, but because they can hold the number 20 team in the country to under 40 points and can, hold their ground in rebounds, and they're effective from the free throw line, that's all it takes. You don't have to be world beaters in every aspect of the game. This isn't UConn, right? Like, this is not, Alabama football or Wisconsin volleyball. You are not going to be able to dominate every phase of the game. Arkansas baseball, whatever that is, Oklahoma softball. Georgia Tech does not have a single program built like that. Maybe golf could get to somewhere like that. Maybe baseball. Who knows if things break the right way. I'm not here to be like Sunny and lollipops. Like, we have teams that are good enough in enough phases of the game with enough consistency that, men's, women's tennis, volleyball that we saw in the fall, women's basketball now, like, these aren't the teams that are undefeated in conference play type teams, but they are good enough to snag that top 4 seed and go on a little run through the tournament or whatever that winds up being,
It's a lot of words to say it's a great team that has some very exploitable flaws, right? I think that's the overarching summary, is that the turnover thing is something that we saw today too, versus UNC, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But free throw, but I think the difference between some other teams and this one is that these sort of are aware of some of their mishaps, right? And they've grown past them, right? We talked a lot earlier in the season about how they were really struggling from the charity strike, and that is a place where they have gotten slowly and steadily better. That's something that clearly that percentage has continued to go up, and that's something that they seem to have been working on.
Yep.
Bringing the turnover numbers down, I think, is a tougher issue, especially because you don't have a point guard, a ball handler that is dealing the ball at the top of the key, right? You're focused more on people that are more physical, more, more, I'm going to take this shot at the top of the key. I'm not necessarily looking to sort of spread the field necessarily. But what you're asking them to do in the offensive setup is spread the field. And that obviously leads to some issues, especially with turnovers. So I think those two things, I think that thing especially is something we saw versus UNC, where as the game went on, and a reason why I got a little concerned in the second and third quarters is that UNC had pressed up a little bit and started playing a little bit more aggressive defense and made Tech make a lot of decisions from right outside the 3-point line. So you have Tech playing the Iowa football kind of time management kind of style of basketball that they do, but all of their decisions aren't forced from the top of the key. They're not spreading the ball from there. They're spreading the ball from basically the midpoint between the 3-point line and the halfway line, or the end of the G and GT, or on the other side, right? So when UNC pushes up, Tech is forced to either take bad perimeter shots or try to pass the ball into the teeth of that defense, and that's where UNC is able to create a little bit of nonsense and a little bit of traction and start clawing their way into the game, I think is a better way to say, not back into the game. But I think another thing is that it also works both ways, right? Tech plays that bruising style of defense to where UNC, for much of this game, the first and fourth quarters especially, just basically flailed at the basket. They were not getting shots to fall. Some things they were not getting shots to fall, and then some, like, they were just getting very, very unlucky, to the point where you were like, oh, they're just taking good shots. They're getting to the basket. They're taking mid-range jumpers, but they are not falling. They're rimming out, or they're just like, the Tech is playing such a good defense that all of those shots are hurried. And but it was just a very good, very solid defensive performance from a team that we know is capable of doing that night after night after night after night against this caliber of opponent, albeit given the caveat that this opponent is not necessarily as good as their record may have made them out to be.
I don't think they've beaten a team that one would colloquially consider better than them yet this year. I think today,
Yeah.
if they would have won today, it would have been their marquee win of the year. But
Yep.
that being said, again, being in the ACC, they do have plenty of opportunities to get one of those, and I'm sure they will, because they are well coached and they're pretty solid, and their defense was good in shutting down Tech at times today too. I think the performance of the game, even if it wasn't, the highest scoring output or anything like that, has to be the Sarah Bates spark plug at the mid end of the third to, get 2 cuts into the lane for, just 2 easy scores. Get those layups, get those buckets. Those are 2 points. Count them each time it happens. And then the 3-pointer that she nailed as well.
The heat check 3.
Yeah.
Heat check 3 in transition was absolutely dirty. I do not care that UNC went back the other way and hit a 3 in response, but she steps into that 3 with no one in her face, drains it, and then does a massive high five line as she's running back. And it's just an insane thing to watch from the stands.
The girls got swag.
And absolutely.
I think the main thing about Tech is I don't want to harp on those flaws that we talked about, though they are things.
And in our defense, when we mentioned the flaws, we said great team, but flaws.
Yes.
We led with the great team bit.
And I think folding right into that really well, this is like the team's team, right? There is no, they are better than the sum of their parts as a team. Because if you look at it on any given day, that leading scorer, and just to pick one most notable stat, can be Lorela Kubai. It could be Nerea Hermosa. It could be Dina Stratmanov. It could be Loda Lahtinen. It could be Aaliyah Love. And that's 5 players, right? And that doesn't even include the oddball chance that, Sarah Bates lights up for 9 points in a 5-minute stretch. Like that is this team, right? It doesn't matter that, Loda Lahtinen, again, just to throw out a name, will not have a 30-point night every night or whatever that is, right? And she doesn't need to, because the rest of the team is deep and they use all the options. And I think the main thing that more than any of the flaws we mentioned, and again, a lot of those are solvable. They have done strides on that free throw shooting, and that is testament to it. They've done, hopefully they can do the same for turnovers or something like that next. The main thing that's going to hold this team back, and even with those flaws, they could already be a Final Four team or out in the first or second game of the tournament. Same with the ACC. They could win the ACC tournament. They could be out in the first game. Like that is
depends how good your opponents are at taking advantage and keying in on those issues.
And the key thing there being, be they from fouls or from injuries, the effect of the short bench. Because at some point, and we can kind of unbox it, that I think it may be a little bit premature to talk about Lorela Kubai going down with an ankle injury, presumably ankle injury, with 2 minutes left of the game, because that was only an hour and a half ago. I know the two of us have not had time to watch like Nell Fortner's post-game presser, and she probably doesn't even know the full extent of that yet, right? Losing Kubai, the anchor, probably, maybe not star, but the anchor of this team would be very tough. And whether that is fouls, Aaliyah Love fouling out of the Louisville game certainly did not help us there, or injuries. Already having Kiara Fletcher on the bench, out medically redshirting due to continued injury there, or the in-season stuff. Sarah Bates last year, potentially this now. Like the Tech's short lineup is probably my main concern there, outside of talking about everything that we have so far.
Mm-hmm. And I've been, this whole time in the background, I've been scrolling through Twitter trying to figure out if there's an update on her health from the press conference, but I'm not really seeing anything right now. I will say, having been there, she was walking around. So just to set the table here, she went down late in the fourth quarter, I think with about 2-3 minutes left. There was a scrum right at the basket. She picked up a rebound and then went to the ground. I think someone had either stepped on her leg or her ankle had sort of curled the wrong way. She was down for a while. I assume TV coverage cut away, but
No,
I have never heard. Oh, it did not.
No, the audio cut out a lot, but the TV.
Yeah, the
was
audio
on
was terrible. The audio was terrible, but the arena, they were also. Wow, we're getting off topic, but ESPN ACC Network's crew was not calling this game from McCamish. They were calling it off of a monitor wherever they're based. But she was down for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. I'm just naming numbers at that point. I have never heard that arena get that dead silent in a while. I think the last time might have been the Jose Alvarado shoulder elbow injury from almost 4 years ago now. But she was down for a while. She gets up. At this point, obviously 3 minutes left in the game. So she just sort of, 2 trainers help her to the locker room. She's able to put a little bit of weight on that leg, but not a ton. So that bit is concerning. That's even with adrenaline. So there's that. And then after the game, with the rest of the team celebrating on the court, she comes out. She's walking a little bit on it, still gingerly, still slowly, with one person sort of, following her around, making sure that she's able to not gonna tip over. So unclear, really. I'm not a doctor, right? That's not what my degree is in, and then far be it for me to also diagnose just by looking at video, basically. Well, IRL video, never mind. But we'll see. It could either be a 2-week thing where it's just a sprain, or it could be done for the year. Foot injuries are weird. They always have been. And so we'll just kind of have to evaluate once we get a press release, which we literally have not seen. I don't even know if there was press conference coverage of this. So
there was. I just was about to log on to this and only realized it.
Womp womp. I didn't see it, so there's not anything on Twitter either. So we'll just have to either go back and watch Nell's press conference to see if there's an update, or just sort of pay attention. They do play again Thursday. I forgot to look at who the opponent was. I think it's Boston College. But the next 2 weeks are kind of a very interesting stretch for this team. And it gets more concerning if Kubai isn't able to play, especially like you said, with the short bench. Boston College is coming off of upsets of Notre Dame and Miami. That's next. That's coming on Thursday. Clemson, that one should be, regardless of who you have available, that one should be pretty straightforward.
Watch yourself.
I'm just saying it should be straightforward. Look, I have broken out of my shell of sports fatalism for now.
We played them 3 times last year and almost lost twice, as much as we should not have, but just my
straightforward. He said straightforward. Duke is very good. They are also ranked. Carol Lawson has done a really good job with that program, and even despite them taking a year off, basically, there's a week break after that, but then they go to Raleigh to play NC State in the Play for K game. That is a really, really good opportunity to get arguably even more signature win than UConn in terms of the context of this season, rather than, program defining, et cetera, et cetera. Given that NC State is still undefeated in conference, and still, they're like number 4, number 2, something absurd, and still sort of murder birding fools left and right. So really good opportunity here to make a statement, but also I have, especially with the short bench, I have some difficulty seeing how this happens without Kubai at least 80 to 90%.
Yeah. But that's the thing too. There's almost an hour between, not an hour, almost a week between the Duke game and the NC State game. So yeah, if you set the clock like that, we got about 16 days, hopefully, before before the UNC or before the
NC
NC
State
State contest. So that would be my main thing to watch for there. But
yeah, it's really, I think that the sum total of what's ahead for women's basketball really hinges on a medical evaluation coming up later this week.
so basically, we don't know anything, and this was all speculation following the results of this game, and that's okay because
Rampant speculation is kind of our bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking about teams that don't really need rampant speculation, let's talk about the other team that inhabits McCamish Pavilion, men's basketball. I have put in the document, big sigh. Every game is the same. Every game that they've played this season is the exact same. I don't know if we need to go into the exact details of what has happened. The short version is that this team has not put together good results, right? Josh Passer, I think we owe it to him to cut him a little bit of slack, because
plenty of slack.
I think, and I'm saying this not as a biased individual. I'm really trying to say this is not as a biased individual, but losing an ACC Player of the Year and a ACC Defensive Player of the Year who played almost all of the minutes available to them or available in a season, that level of production is just impossible to replace, right? Or near impossible to replace with freshmen.
Yep.
I think he deserves a little bit of slack, but I think we can also still say that the performances have been bad. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would agree. I think they've been disappointing, but not in a way that's like, I mean, it's a little concerning, but I would say that we have not yet had a game against Power 5 competition where Debo, Jordan Mecca, Miles Kelly, etc., probably 2 or 3 more on this list that I could keep going on, maybe even Davon Smith, have played up to their potential. I think that this team is stuck almost between a spot where parts of it are too old, the get old and stay there, and parts are too young. And it is a very interesting combination then between, Mike DeVoe and Jordan Usher and even Kyle Sturdivant. They've been around a long time. They've been around a long time at this point, and they know how they want to play. They've seen success. They know what that looks like, and that's great. That's a value, but it also is a point where it doesn't seem like it's getting us enough opportunity to get Debo Coleman, Miles Kelly, Jordan Mecca the minutes that they need, the development they need. This may be a bold take in saying that Mike DeVoe and Jordan Usher are too good for their own good, but I don't know. I think that there's also just a lot of youth on the team, and they need more time. And I think maybe we didn't expect they would need this much time. I think you can talk to Passner in his post game and various presser comments of they thought they were getting Jose Alvarado back. People were, and they didn't know about Moses. But like, it's hard to recruit and say, or go to the transfer portal, whatever that is, and say, hey, am I going to be able to get minutes? Like, what if this Moses Wright guy comes back? Then I would just be sitting on the bench the whole time. What if this, and
especially I think,
guy comes back? Like, if you don't know Jose's not going to be here, then what are you supposed to say about that?
I think one thing that also made that more difficult is that, and this is sort of a Passner specific comment, is that Passner that entire spring publicly stated that Tech was going to go into the transfer portal, but if Jose Alvarado wanted to come back to Tech, the spot would be open. He was very, which like, props to him for saying it, but at the same time, you lose a little bit of leverage when you're trying to recruit guys into your program from the transfer portal, right? Like you said, they don't know if the guy is going to come back and they're going to get minutes. And so that's why you see Tech, like you said, half old and stayed old, and then half young and very, very raw. So I think one of the points that you made in terms of Michael DeVoe and Jordan Usher and Kyle Sturdivant, maybe Kyle Sturdivant a little bit less so, but Michael DeVoe and Jordan Usher still being on the team and coming back for their extra years. I don't think it would have been. I don't think saying that or let me see how I can phrase this. Saying that they should have just left and the team would be better off is not necessarily true.
It's not. I don't want that to be the takeaway either.
But I think the point that we can make is these kinds of results would have cut Pastner more slack had they left.
Yes.
Right? The public would be the sort of Georgia Tech ecosystem, fans, etc., the media, etc., would be willing to cut Pastner more slack had he had a full deck of freshmen and sophomores that hadn't really seen a lot of time because of a short rotation last year, rather than a team that is half old, half young, and sort of struggling to find the balance of performance and find consistency.
Yep, I would agree. I think the other thing I would want to add to that too is just the concept, the idea of like, not that I don't think last year's net results can be seen as the Pastner mountaintop, just because I like you got to say like, okay, it's the expectation can't really be one NCAA tournament every 5 years. Granted, we won the ACC tournament, but I'll admit to this too. That's probably the flukiest ACC tournament win that there will ever possibly be. We only won 2 games. Like
until the next pandemic, but what have you?
Exactly. Like it's frustrating because I think the general expectation maybe was probably to get back to the tournament, returning to vote, returning Usher, at the time, potentially even Alvarado and Wright. But I think there's more of an existential dread to it. And this is me kind of diagnosing the situation rather than like having any actual numbers.
Psychologist Jake is in the office.
Exactly. I think it is people not seeing their increased expectations met rather than this being the obvious like not return to form, but the regression that was due to it. We won what, like 13 of the last 14 games last year or something ridiculous.
Absurd. Like it took an absurd run to get to the tournament because they were on that bubble for months and months and months.
I completely pulled that number out of nowhere. It could have been like 9 of 10 or whatever it was. Georgia Tech had to earn every bit of it. And I think that people are more existentially dreading that is going to be the peak, is going to have to be the scratch and claw to be in the tournament at all, when I don't really think that's the case, because quite frankly, the recruits that aren't getting enough time right now, or not recruits, but the freshmen that aren't getting enough time right now are the same people that were just Pastner's best ranked recruiting class ever. Like, I think just let the man work. Like, give it another cycle, give it a year or two. Like, and it sucks. I'm not trying to say write this off, because there's enough game left in the season that you can put together a solid end to the year, finish a little bit above 500 or even at 500 going in the ACC tournament. You just got to win 5 games. You're in. You just got to win a couple. Maybe you make a deep NIT run. I still found a lot of fun and value my freshman year of college with that NIT run. Granted, it's not an NCAA tournament run, but it is perfectly an acceptable and achievable thing that this team could do. And heck, there's enough game and enough time left in the season that they can win 10 plus more games. You never know. They could catch fire and you could be laughing about it, because quite frankly, and Pastner's pointed this out too. One, I think he's been good about not making the Jose Moses excuse this year, but 2, his teams have gotten better throughout the year. And I don't think this team's played enough games yet together as like a team with how many new faces or different roles everyone has for it to be, the world is ending. Oh no, what's going to happen?
I mean, we play 20 ACC games these days, right?
Yeah.
And you still have the bulk of those left. I feel like there's
I think we have 14 or something like that left.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, at least 13.
Yeah.
Counting is hard. But I'm with you. I think it's just it's expectations that have not been properly reset for across a fan base that. Yeah.
I was excited. Sue me.
I'll have my lawyer contact yours. Just give me a couple days.
All right. Email compliance at fromtherumbleseat.com, please.
Everyone send your complaints to @Magna Carta Live on Twitter.
Yep. Thanks.
Director of Compliance. So before we run out of time here, give me one reason to keep watching this team despite sort of the malaise that we've discussed.
I mean, it's college basketball. It is the most exciting sport. Like, I mean, that's a cop out, but I could watch terrible basketball all day. Maybe that's just my fatal.
That's some sicko stuff right there.
Hey, I grew up on some bad Missouri Valley Bradley teams in the early 2000s.
Would you say they were badly Braves?
Oh, no. But when it comes together, it pays off. I think this team has not played to our expectations nor to their potential. I think there's a lot of potential left out there, out tapped. And even then, if they're not winning the games, just seeing how Kelly, Coleman, Mecca, again, I'll put that out there, even Davon Smith, we've seen him get better, I would say. And just keep eye on those. That's the future, right? Michael DeVoe and Jordan Usher, as much as I love them and have enjoyed their time on the flats, they're not the future. Like, watch these to see who's going to be starting next year. And I don't know, the basketball emotions, and I'm sure you can back this up, have been all over the board, seeing Jose Alvarado finally get the time in the sun that we all knew he was going to get. And like, no one plays with as much heart and as clean of a stingy defense as he does. And you cannot have those same expectations of whoever's handling about, whether it's Davon or Kyle Sturdivant or whoever. They're not Jose Alvarado, right? And I think that's been good perspective of, these guys aren't going to be Moses or Jose, or, we only got 2 years of James Banks. And even then he was like a lovable character and a great player and, very good with the social media and all those things that endear players to us. Somebody's going to bubble up in the similar or same vein. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's going to be somebody. And the time's now to watch and see who that's going to be. Is that kind of weird of a cop out? I feel like that was a weird little dive.
No, that's fine. I'm now curious where James Banks plays, and now I have to figure this out. Well, I'll figure it out off stream, but I will figure it out. I'm very curious. It looks like he plays for the Birmingham Squadron.
Okay.
Oh, that's the Pelicans G League team.
Hey, The Pelicans must really like Josh Pastner or something.
So he played 2 years for I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, an Israeli Premier League side, and then came back to the U.S. in August. So it's pretty sick.
He's close. I need to look up. I haven't heard much on Moses Wright lately either. I'm gonna give him a cursory little.
Is he also still on the Pelicans practice squad or the Pelicans G League team?
Looks like Agua Caliente Clippers.
Oh, that's the Clippers G League team.
Yeah.
No, I think now we're just spinning our wheels. Anything else to discuss before we get out of here?
I don't know. I think that's about it for what I got in terms of things to look for. Tennis is the theme of the upcoming week. That's going to be probably the most interesting stuff to watch to see if Tech can play into their respective ITA indoor nationals tournaments. Other than that, we're rocketing towards baseball and softball season. So there'll be plenty of content to talk about once that starts. And I think we still win an hour today on this short week. So,
oh my God, you need to stop telling me that these things are going to be short, because then I have to sit and edit an hour of audio every single time.
We were perfect today, so you should not have to make any edits, and nobody correct us, because then that ruins the illusion.
I never edit these things anyway, so really we're giving up the game. We will see everyone next